Okay, let's unpack this. You're learning English, you're putting in the work, building vocabulary, getting the grammar down. But then you go to actually speak, and there's that moment, right? That little pause, that feeling like you're translating.
Absolutely.
You know what you want to say, but it feels like your brain has to run it through your native language first, then spit it out in English.
It's such a common experience, a hurdle, really, for so many learners.
And honestly, it can feel like a huge bottleneck. It slows you right down.
That's exactly right. And it's a recognized thing. What we're diving into today is precisely that internal process, that feeling that you're thinking, okay, first in your native language, getting the idea sorted there, and then trying to, well, convert it, translate it into English before you can actually say it.
Ah, yes, the famous translation habit. It really is like having this extra step, the sort of linguistic middleman inside your head, taking the order in one language, then trying to perfectly match it in another. And that whole process, well, anyone who's been there knows, it doesn't just add time. It can really, really slow you down. You get those hesitations.
Yeah, those pauses.
And maybe even worse, sometimes it makes your English sound, well, maybe a bit stiff, a little unnatural.
Or even grammatically a bit off sometimes.
Right. Because you're sort of subconsciously mapping it onto the structure of your first language.
Precisely. You're basically adding this unnecessary, time-consuming layer to what should ideally be a much more direct process. Our source material for this deep dive, it really highlights that native speakers, they bypass this completely.
Right.
When they want to express an idea, the concept itself and the right English words, the sentence structure, it all just comes together directly, almost, simultaneously. There's no translation layer happening before they speak.
And that right there, that's the core of what we're trying to get at in this deep dive today.
Yeah.
We want to explore exactly why this translation habit forms in the first place, which is actually pretty fascinating, cognitively speaking.
It really is.
And this is the really practical part. We're going to lay out some actual concrete steps, things you can do, daily exercises you can start weaving into your routine, like right now, to train your brain to start skipping that translation step.
Yeah, we'll really get into the techniques. The goal is to build faster, more automatic links between the ideas in your head, the English words for them, and crucially, the English sentence structures.
Oh.
Basically moving towards thinking directly in English.
So by the time we wrap up this deep dive, you should have a clear roadmap, a set of strategies you can actually use straight away.
That's the plan. A practical path to start training your brain for, smoother, more confident communication, making English feel less like a code you're constantly trying to crack under pressure.
And more like just how you think.
Exactly. A natural extension of your thoughts.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's unpack this, starting right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Why does this translation habit get so stuck, so ingrained? And what's the ultimate goal we're aiming for by breaking it?
Right. So the fundamental question, why does this happen? Why do so many of us fall into this pattern?
Yeah.
Our source material points to a key reason, and it's really rooted in how our brains naturally learn new things, especially when you're starting out with a language.
Okay.
The brain's kind of default strategy, the easiest way to understand and remember new stuff, is to link it back to what it already knows really, really well.
Which is your native language.
Exactly. The equivalent word or concept in your first language. It's the strongest reference point you have.
Right. Okay, so it's like, imagine your brain is a library. When you learn a new English word, say dog, the quickest way to file it initially is to stick a note on it saying, see also the word for dog in my language.
That's a great analogy. Your brain goes, okay, this new sound dog, it means that furry thing with 4 legs. I already have a super strong, well-established label for that in my own language. Let's just link this new English sound dog to that existing label.
And initially, that's really helpful, right? For just building vocabulary quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's highly effective for initial understanding and remembering words.
Yeah.
But the challenge kicks in because the more you rely on that system, that cross-referencing,
the stronger that pathway becomes, the one going back to your native language.
Precisely. Over time, as you keep learning words, maybe even grammar, by constantly mentally comparing them back to your native tongue, you're reinforcing that connection again and again. The source describes it perfectly.
Yeah.
It becomes a deeply ingrained habit, a default neural pathway.
So then later, when you actually want to talk about your dog, maybe say, my dog is sleeping.
Your brain's quickest route to the concept of that animal leads first to the native language word for dog. It's the most well-worn path.
Got it.
Then, because you're trying to speak English, your brain has to take that little detour translate the native word back into the English word dog,
Yeah.
and then try to assemble the English sentence around it.
And that's it. That's the delay. That extra mental hop, that internal translation loop, that's what adds the time. Milliseconds, maybe even seconds.
Creating those pauses, those hesitations that feel awkward, and make your speech sound less, well, fluid,
Yeah.
less spontaneous.
You're literally adding an extra processing step that just doesn't need to be there if you're thinking directly.
Exactly. You've created a bottleneck in your own communication pipeline.
So the goal then, the ultimate objective we're shooting for, as the source makes clear,
Is to reroute that whole process.
yeah,
We want to train the brain to build a direct, strong link between the English word dog, the sound, the written form, the whole concept attached to it, and the meaning, the actual image or idea of that furry animal.
completely bypassing the native language label, cutting it out of the loop.
Exactly. That direct connection. That's how a native English speaker's brain works. They think of the animal, the English word dog, is just there, instantly accessible. No intermediate translation step required.
So really, the mission is about building new neural pathways, like carving new roads in your brain that go straight from an English word or concept directly to its meaning and the English structures needed to use it. Making that old translation highway less necessary, less traveled, and eventually, hopefully, something you barely use, especially when you need to speak quickly.
It's about creating a new default setting for how your brain handles information when you're operating in English mode.
Yeah.
A fundamental shift in your internal linguistic setup.
Okay, that makes the problem and the goal really clear. So, the big question, how do we actually do it? How do we start building these direct pathways? Let's get practical. Step one sounds almost too simple.
It does, doesn't it? But its simplicity is actually its strength, because you can weave it into your day without needing like intense focus or talking to anyone.
Okay.
Step one is basically about starting to have simple English thoughts inside your head, not speaking out loud, not writing, just your internal monologue, the thoughts running through your mind all day.
So even if I'm just like walking down the street or waiting for the kettle to boil or just sitting doing nothing, I can be training my brain then.
Absolutely. That's the perfect time. The whole point here, as the source notes, is to start training your brain's background processing. You're starting to weave English into your most basic thought patterns, the ones that are often silent, almost subconscious.
Giving English a job to do even when there's no pressure to perform externally.
Exactly.
So what does that actually look like? Give me some more concrete examples. What kind of simple thoughts?
Yeah, the source has some great, really relatable starting points. Like, imagine you're walking outside. Instead of your inner voice just chattering away in your native language about what you see, you make a conscious effort.
Okay.
You look around and form simple descriptive English thoughts. Like you said, okay, I'm outside now, the sun is shining, but push it a bit further. Look up. The sky is blue today. See some trees. Those trees are very tall. Notice a bird. A bird is singing. Maybe you see someone walk past. I see a man with a blue shirt. Or a fast car. That car is really fast. Just simple observations about your immediate reality.
So I become like a silent English commentator on my own life.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. If you're at home, maybe making coffee, think, I need water. I'll boil the kettle. Where's the coffee?
Right.
Here it is. Now I add the coffee.
Right.
If you're on the bus or train, look out the window. There are lots of cars today. Traffic is slow. That building looks interesting. Even getting dressed. I put on my socks. These are my favorite socks. Now my shoes. These shoes are comfortable. Just narrating the simple, concrete stuff around you.
Okay, I get the what. But why does this seemingly basic practice actually help break the translation habit? What's the mechanism in the brain?
Right. This is the crucial part. When you consciously make these simple internal statements in English, you are actively bypassing your native language for those specific concepts. You're forcing your brain to connect the English word sun directly to the visual experience of that bright thing in the sky, not to the native word for sun first. You're linking tree directly to the image of the plant, not its translation. You're building those direct connections we talked about between the English words or simple phrases and the actual objects, actions, or states they represent in the real world, without activating the native language label first.
I see. So you're essentially starving that old translation pathway by creating and actively using a new direct English to meaning pathway.
Yes.
You're cutting out the middleman right from the start, at least for these simple, concrete things.
That's the core cognitive idea.
Yeah.
Every single time you consciously think the sky is blue, while you're actually looking at a blue sky, you strengthen that direct link. English phrase to sensory experience, English phrase to meaning, without triggering the native language equivalent.
Right.
It's like laying the absolute foundation for direct thought, starting with the simplest bricks, basic observations, simple actions. Doing this consistently, even for just a few minutes scattered through the day, starts making English more available, more present in your internal world for these basic descriptions.
Okay, step 1. Simple internal English commentary. Got it. What's step 2 then? How do we build on that?
Step 2 flows naturally from step 1, but it makes things a bit more focused, a bit more active. It's about actively naming objects around you in English.
So instead of just general thoughts about the environment, I'm deliberately pointing my attention at specific things and retrieving the English label.
Yes, precisely. You're consciously engaging with your immediate surroundings and practicing pulling up the English name for specific items in English. The source suggests doing this intentionally, maybe just taking a moment to look around the room you're in right now, your kitchen, your desk, wherever.
Like, okay, looking at my desk, this is a keyboard, that's a monitor, this is my water bottle, that's a notebook, that's a pen, like that.
Exactly like that. The examples in the source are perfect because they're so specific. Looking at furniture, consciously think this is a table. Identifying your electronics, that's my laptop.
Right.
Or even describing something you're holding or using, I'm drinking coffee, I'm holding my phone.
It still sounds incredibly simple, though, just saying the names of things. How powerful can that really be for, rewiring my brain?
This is where the source really emphasizes the surprising power. It's the repetition and the conscious act of labeling that does the work.
Okay.
Every single time you look at your laptop and consciously think or whisper laptop in English, you are actively reinforcing that direct neural pathway, the one between seeing that object and accessing the English word for it.
Not object native word, English word.
Exactly. You're strengthening the direct object English word connection, making it stronger, faster, more easily accessible than the roundabout translation route. You are literally practicing the retrieval of the English word directly from the concept itself.
It's like building muscle memory, isn't it? But for those specific word concept links in English, the more reps you do of directly accessing the English label,
The more automatic and faster that retrieval becomes.
Exactly. Think
Yeah.
about carving a path in a forest. The first few times, it's tough. You push branches aside, but walk it every day.
It gets clearer, faster, easier. Right. Every time you name an object in English, you're walking and clearing that direct English path, making the old, overgrown native language detour seem less appealing, less necessary. Eventually, you just don't even notice it's there.
And the source suggests a really great way to turbocharge this, playing a 5-minute game.
Yes, I love this idea. It adds that layer of intentionality plus a bit of speed, which is super effective. Basically, set a timer for 5 minutes.
Okay.
Look around wherever you are, your room, the kitchen, maybe outside, and name everything you can see in English as fast as you can, either silently in your head or whispering if you prefer.
Ooh, I like that. Adding the speed element, it turns it into a bit of a drill, doesn't it? A challenge against the clock. Makes it feel less like homework.
It really does. And that speed is actually crucial for tackling the translation habit head on. When you're pushing yourself to name things quickly, your brain just doesn't have the luxury of time to wander down the native language path first.
It has to grab the quickest available label.
Exactly. It's forced to find the most accessible word. But consistently practicing retrieving the English word quickly, you're training your brain to make the English label the fastest, most automatic option when you see that object. It actively works against that slower multi-step translation process.
So over time, the game makes the English naming quicker, more automatic. It becomes almost a reflex. You see chair, you think chair instantly, not your native word, then chair.
Precisely. That's the goal of this step.
Okay, so step 1, integrate simple internal thoughts. Step 2, focused object naming, maybe with the speed game. What's the next logical step up from there?
Step 3 is the natural and really necessary progression. Moving from single words or simple labels to thinking in full sentences.
Ah, okay.
Once you're getting more comfortable recognizing and labeling individual things or basic concepts in English internally, you start connecting those words,
Yeah.
using the basic building blocks of English sentences in your head.
So it's not just spotting the table and thinking table, it's describing something about the table or what you're doing near it or a situation involving it, using a whole sentence.
Exactly. The complexity bumps up just a little, but the core principle is the same. Keep the entire thought process within English. Instead of your internal thought being just the noun, table, or chair, your thoughts start forming complete sentences. Maybe short, simple ones to start, but complete sentences describing situations, actions, observations.
Like that really clear example the source used about waiting for the bus. That felt very practical.
Yes, that's a perfect illustration of where translation really causes delays in real life. Instead of your first thought being the native word for bus, which then needs translating before you can even start forming an English sentence about it.
Your internal thought jumps straight to English.
Right. Directly to a full sentence expressing the situation in English. I'm waiting for the bus. Or maybe, oh, the bus is late today. You're processing the whole situation, the waiting, the concept of lateness, and expressing it immediately using English structure and vocabulary. No detour.
That immediately feels much closer to how actual spontaneous talking works, doesn't it? You're not just identifying things, you're reacting to a situation, forming a complete thought about it.
Precisely. Another great example from the source was thinking about the weather and connecting it directly to a feeling or a plan. So instead of just thinking the native equivalent of nice weather, your internal thought becomes the complete English sentence. The weather's nice, maybe followed by, I should go for a walk later.
Or, it's raining, I need my umbrella.
Exactly. You're linking observations to simple actions or needs using standard English sentence patterns all inside your head.
And the source really emphasizes plugging this into everyday routines. I guess things like walking, cooking, cleaning, commuting, even just browsing online are perfect because your mind isn't usually maxed out on complex stuff, right? There's mental bandwidth available.
Absolutely. Those mundane, often quite automatic activities become prime opportunities to practice building English sentences internally without the pressure of actually having to speak to someone.
Okay.
While you're washing dishes, you can think, I'm washing the dishes now. The water feels warm. There are a lot of plates tonight. While you're walking to the shops, I am walking to the shop. I need to buy milk and bread. Oh, the street is quite busy this morning. You're constantly interacting with your environment or doing things you can describe using simple, maybe present tense English sentences. You can even react internally to things you read or hear. See a news headline. That sounds interesting. Hear someone laugh nearby. What are they laughing about? All internal English practice.
Okay, but why is this step so crucial? What does thinking in full sentences achieve that just naming objects doesn't? It feels like a bigger jump.
It is a bigger jump, and it's vital because it transitions your brain from just associating individual English words with concepts to actually practicing the structural patterns, the grammar, the syntax of English sentences internally.
Yeah. The construction part.
Yes. Thinking in full sentences, even simple ones, forces you to practice things like sentence construction, maybe simple verb conjugations, am washing is shining, need, word order, all in your mind. This is absolutely essential because real communication requires complete sentences, not just spitting out words.
Right.
You're training your brain to assemble thoughts using English grammar rules automatically before you even open your mouth. This internal fluency in sentence building is a necessary stepping stone to speaking fluently. You're moving from knowing the bricks, words, to practicing how to actually build walls, sentences.
You're building the framework, the scaffolding for speech, not just piling up the individual bricks.
Exactly. It's a critical step. It makes English start to function internally as a system for expressing complete ideas directly, rather than just being a list of labels you pull from a dictionary after thinking in your native language. It practices the use of the language in a meaningful, structural way.
Okay, this is making a lot of sense. So, we've got simple internal thoughts, focused object naming with speed, thinking in full sentences during daily tasks. What's step 4? The source hinted this is where it gets really interesting and starts to feel much more like actual communication.
It absolutely does. Step 4 is, I think, really powerful. It's about having silent conversations in your head.
Silent conversations.
Yeah, it's a more advanced, much more dynamic technique where you actively simulate real conversational exchanges, but entirely internally. It takes the sentence building from step 3 and puts it into a kind of social practice context.
Okay, so I'm not just thinking about my environment or what I'm doing anymore. I'm actually imagining interacting with other people and practicing the back and forth of a conversation.
Precisely that.
Yeah.
It involves actively imagining scenarios where you'd need to speak English, and then mentally running through the entire dialogue. Your part, what the other person might likely say or ask, and then your response to that.
So you're not just forming random sentences, you're formulating sentences in response to something within a simulated chat.
Exactly. It's responsive practice.
The source gave that really good, specific example about ordering coffee. Can you walk us through that again? How does that internal process work and why does it help so much?
Yeah, it's a brilliant example because it's so common, usually fairly low stakes, and something many learners encounter, right? So imagine you're standing in line at a coffee shop. You know you're going to have to order in English.
Okay, feeling a little nervous maybe.
Maybe. So in your head, you start preparing. First, thinking about what you need to say to kick things off. Okay, almost my turn. What should I say to the barista?
Right, planning your opening line.
Exactly. You formulate your request internally. Maybe you even practice the exact phrasing you want to use. Okay, I'll say, "Hi, can I have a latte, please?" Or maybe, "Good morning, one latte, please." You run through the options, maybe refine it, solidify the one you'll use.
But as we know, a conversation isn't just delivering your line and walking away.
Right, it's a dynamic back and forth. And this technique crucially includes anticipating the other person's likely responses or follow-up questions.
Ah, okay.
So you think, okay, what might the barista ask me next? Common things in that situation, right? So you anticipate. They'll probably ask, do you want it hot or iced? Or maybe what size would you like? Or will that be for here or to go?
And then this is the clever bit. You mentally prepare your replies to those specific questions you just anticipated.
That's the key. That's the practice. Okay, if they ask hot or iced, I'll say, hot, please. Or if they ask about size, I'll say, medium size, thanks. You run through the entire potential mini interaction in your mind, preparing your responses to the expected prompts.
Wow. Okay, the benefit there feels huge. You're not just practicing words or grammar in isolation. You're practicing the actual flow of a conversation. You're anticipating common exchanges. And you're practicing retrieving the right information and sentence structure under simulated conversational pressure, even if it's just pressure you're putting on yourself in your head.
That is the core benefit, yes.
Yeah.
And that's why this step is so powerful for boosting speaking fluency and confidence. By actively rehearsing these imaginary conversations, you are proactively priming your brain for the real thing. You're practicing retrieving the right vocabulary, finding the appropriate tone, constructing the correct sentence structure, all within a conversational context. This mental practice solidifies those common response patterns. It helps you connect specific cues, like a question from the barista, directly to the appropriate English reply. Without needing to translate their question first, figure out your answer in your native language, and then translate your answer back.
So, when the real situation happens, when you actually step up to the counter, your brain isn't encountering this interaction cold. It's already run the simulation multiple times. It's like an athlete visualizing the play perfectly before the game even starts.
That's a perfect analogy. And this ties directly back to overcoming that core problem of translation delay. Because you've mentally rehearsed it, the necessary words and sentence structures are already kind of warmed up, highly activated, and linked to the specific conversational cues you practiced.
Right.
This makes it so much more likely that when the real moment comes, you can access and produce the English response directly, quickly, smoothly, automatically. You've already strengthened the direct English pathways needed for that specific kind of interaction. The delay caused by translation becomes much less likely, or at least drastically reduced.
It really is like building muscle memory, but for conversational turns. The more you practice these little scenarios, even just silently in your head, the smoother and faster and more automatic the actual performance becomes when you have to speak for real.
Spot on. You're building conversational fluency not just by studying the language, but by practicing the act of retrieving and responding within these simulated real-world contexts.
And you could do this for loads of situations, couldn't you?
Absolutely. Asking for directions. Mentally rehearse, "Excuse me, could you tell me how to get to the station?" Anticipate replies like, "Go straight, then turn left," and think about how you'd say thank you.
Or buying a train ticket.
Yeah. "Hello, I'd like one return ticket to Manchester, please." Anticipate questions about time or platform. Practice saying, "What time is the next train?"
Even simple stuff like introducing yourself.
Definitely. "Hi, my name is your name. It's nice to meet you." Anticipate, "Nice to meet you." And maybe prepare a follow-up like, "Are you enjoying the conference?" Or responding to, "How was your weekend?" Practice saying, "It was good, thanks.
But
Pretty relaxing. I just watched a movie. How about yours?"
the possibilities are endless, really. And tailoring them to situations you actually expect to encounter makes the practice super relevant.
Exactly. Highly targeted practice.
Okay, this is brilliant. We've covered the 4 key steps, simple internal thoughts all day, actively naming objects, maybe with speed, thinking in full sentences during daily tasks, and now these silent, simulated conversations. It all sounds incredibly practical, and I can see how it progressively builds that skill of direct English thinking. Now, let's pivot slightly and talk about the so what. Why does this matter in the real world? What are the implications of this kind of training, especially when you're actually interacting in English-speaking places?
Right. This is where it gets really practical, where the rubber meets the road, you could say. Our source material brings up a really important point here, how quick thinking and responding are often quite valued skills, or at least sort of expected in many English-speaking cultures and contexts.
That feels true. Just anecdotally, conversations, especially informal ones, can seem to move pretty fast sometimes. There can be a quicker rhythm than maybe in some other languages or cultural settings.
They absolutely can. Now, obviously, this varies a lot, but particularly in casual chat, there's often a generally expectation of relatively timely, natural-sounding answers. People don't usually leave really long pauses after someone asks a simple question. A gap of more than, say, a couple of seconds can sometimes feel a bit noticeable in a quick back and forth.
And the source mentioned the potential downside of having those significant pauses or just consistently responding slowly. Like you said earlier, it can sometimes unintentionally make the conversation feel a bit awkward, maybe stilted.
It can, yeah.
Or even like there's a communication hiccup, not because you said anything wrong grammatically, but just because the timing, the pace feels off.
Right. Those pauses, even if they're purely because you're busy translating inside your head, can sometimes be misread by the other person. Well, they might inadvertently signal hesitation, maybe uncertainty, perhaps even a lack of understanding to a native speaker who's just used to a faster conversational rhythm. Now, obviously, patient speakers exist everywhere, but in many quick everyday situations, ordering coffee, asking for directions, a quick chat in the hallway, that delay can kind of disrupt the natural flow of the exchange.
Yeah, it might make the person you're talking to feel like they need to repeat themselves or maybe rephrase the question, even if you understood perfectly fine, but we're just, processing your reply.
Exactly that. It can create a slight friction in the interaction.
And that's why this training, this effort to think directly in English is so directly connected, not just to being grammatically correct, but to actually sounding and maybe more importantly, feeling more fluent.
Absolutely.
It's fundamentally about speeding up and smoothing out your internal cognitive process, which then directly translates into the speed and smoothness of your spoken delivery.
Couldn't have said it better. The faster you can internally form your thoughts, assemble your sentences in English without needing that native language go-between, the more natural your responses will sound, the more timely they'll be, the more effortless the conversation will feel, both for you and the person you're speaking with.
You'll be much better equipped to just keep up with the natural pace of native speakers, right? To jump into discussions more spontaneously, maybe feel less stressed in those faster exchanges.
Definitely. Significantly more comfortable, less anxious.
So this brain training stuff, these steps we've talked about, it's not just some abstract language learning theory stuck in a textbook or an app. It has a direct, tangible impact on your ability to connect with people comfortably, confidently, effectively in real-world English environments. It's really about building fluency in that broader sense. Yeah, accuracy matters, but so do the pace, the rhythm, the overall flow of your communication. It's about making English feel less like a puzzle you're desperately trying to solve under pressure.
And more like a tool that's just readily available, naturally there for you to express yourself when you need it.
Exactly. It's moving English from being something you have to consciously process every time to something you can just use more instinctively.
And that shift, when it starts to happen, feels transformative for your confidence and how effective you feel communicating.
Okay, brilliant. This deep dive has really clarified why that translation habit kicks in, why it's a barrier, what the actual goal of direct English thinking is, and crucially, giving us 4 practical, progressive steps to actually work towards it. Plus, we've seen why the pace this enables is so important for real-world interaction. Now, time to turn all this insight into action.
Indeed, action time. So here is the challenge for you, for everyone listening, based directly on these methods we've just walked through. We've broken it down into 3 actionable steps you can genuinely start doing today.
Okay, step 1.
First, find just 5 minutes today. That's it, 5 minutes. And dedicate it specifically to naming objects around you in English. Use that 5-minute game concept we discussed.
Right, the speed drill.
Yeah, look around the room you're in right now, or your kitchen, your office, outside, wherever. Identify everything you can see. Think the English word or say it quietly. Try to do it relatively quickly. Build that speed, that automatic link between seeing the thing and knowing the English word. Just 5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes object naming speed round. Got it.
Second, make a conscious effort today to integrate thinking in full, simple English sentences during one specific, simple daily activity. Pick one.
Like making breakfast.
Perfect. Or taking a shower, your commute, doing a short chore like loading the dishwasher. While you're doing that one activity, actively try to narrate what you're doing or observing internally, using complete English sentences.
Like, I'm pouring the milk now. The water is getting warmer. The train is crowded this morning. I am putting the plates in the dishwasher. Simple stuff like that.
Exactly like that. Choose one activity and just focus on describing it internally in English sentences while you do it.
Okay, pick one daily task for internal English sentence narration.
Right.
And third,
take just a moment today to imagine one short, simple conversation scenario. Something you might realistically encounter.
like the coffee shop example.
Or asking a stranger for directions. Maybe a quick chat with a colleague about their weekend plans, buying something simple at a shop. Pick one realistic scenario.
Okay.
Then mentally practice it. Practice your potential opening line. Anticipate what the other person might say or ask in return, and then practice your response to that. All in English, all inside your head. Just run through maybe 2 or 3 turns of that imagined conversation.
Got it. Practice one mini conversation internally. Okay, those 3 steps feel very doable. 5-minute object game, internal sentences during one task, and one silent conversation practice.
Exactly. And while you're trying these, we'd really encourage you to reflect a bit on your own process. As you try them, do you notice yourself still translating sometimes? When does it happen most? What specific situations or types of thoughts trigger that translation habit for you?
Yeah, becoming aware of it is probably half the battle.
It really is.
Yeah.
And think about methods maybe you've already tried. Are any working? Which of the techniques we talked about today, the simple background thoughts, the object naming, the full sentences, the silent conversations, which one feels like it might be most helpful or maybe most challenging for you right now? Where can you realistically fit this practice into your day?
Good questions to ask yourself. And remember, everyone, this is just one really important piece of the whole language learning puzzle, isn't it?
Absolutely.
As the source material hinted, a crucial next step to really make English feel second nature is all about reinforcing what you learn. Consistent repetition, active use, making those words, phrases, sentence patterns really stick so they're instantly available when you need them.
We'll definitely touch on those aspects, things like reinforcement and effective retrieval practice in future deep dives. But for now, the focus is on building that direct thinking habit.
Continuous, intentional practice is the name of the game here. These internal exercises, they might feel a bit odd at first, maybe slow, maybe even frustrating sometimes.
That's normal.
Yeah.
You're actively trying to forge new paths in your brain while consciously trying not to use the old comfortable ones. It takes effort.
So be patient with yourself, right? Consistency, even if it's just for these short bursts each day, will gradually build those new direct pathways. They'll get stronger, faster, more automatic over time.
Exactly. Keep practicing. Keep trying to think in English even when no one's listening. Trust that the process is working, even if progress feels slow sometimes. It will make a real tangible difference in how quickly and naturally you can access and use English when it really counts.
Definitely.
And finally, just a little thought to leave you with, something to mull over if you go about your day, and hopefully start trying some of these techniques.
Okay.
If actively training your brain to think directly in English, deliberately bypassing that translation step, if that can significantly speed up your spoken responses and make conversations feel much more natural, what other unexpected benefits might this kind of focused, deliberate mental practice bring?
Interesting question.
Think about it. How might this deliberate brain training, building these direct concept to English links, impact other areas? Could it affect your reading speed? Maybe. Your listening comprehension, if you're not translating what you hear? Your ability to formulate thoughts more quickly when you need to write something?
Or even just your overall confidence in tackling more complex communication situations in English down the line.
Exactly. Could this type of internal practice, this focus on direct thinking, be a key not just to technical fluency, but to achieving a deeper kind of cognitive comfort and ease with the language as a whole?
Definitely something to think about. A great place to wrap up. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into training your brain for direct English thinking.
It was a pleasure. Until next time, keep practicing, keep thinking directly, and keep learning.